How do you think India should deal with someone like Trump?
With Trump, things change overnight. So you always have to be ready for the unpredictable. What we are seeing right now is a president who's desperate for some success. He's not been able to end the Russia-Ukraine war. He's not been able to end Israel's Gaza offensive. On the face of it, you had the Israel-Iran crisis that also, put him in a difficult spot. No deals are working out, so he's obsessed with this thing where he wants a deal. So I think the best thing for India right now is not to get into a war of words with him. U.S. China. Now, what happens here? These are the two big economies of the world. 28 trillion plays 19 trillion. But I'm not getting into GDP numbers only. GDP numbers are only a number at the end of the day. It's what they bring to the table individually and collectively. Both of these countries put together are gladiators when it comes to manufacturing. They are now gladiators when it comes to technology. They are gladiators when it comes to finance. They are gladiators when it comes to
Threat perception for India when it comes to China. If you were to narrow down three domains that we should focus on and safeguard our interest.
China acts. Nature of this entity when it acts is, it means they use every lever in the book against you. The first and most important area is deep sea. I'm not in any way reducing the importance of our land borders, but the fact remains the real place where they can hurt us.
Since PM Modi's last 10 years, we've been focusing on neighborhood first.
Yeah.
How do you assess our relationship with different countries, and do you think we have given enough importance to our neighborhood?
Mr. Modi's famous line early on when he became Prime Minister was, from highways to highways. Highways are information highways.
Yeah.
So he's been very big on the digital revolution. And credit to him for the fact in which he was able to not just bring digitalization to India, but also offer this digitalization to neighbors.
We are seen as a very, pragmatic partner in Africa as well.
For a long time, Africa, the refrain on Africa was, this is the dark continent, this is the forgotten continent, this is the lost continent. Africa today is the youngest continent in the world.
The West doesn't want Pakistan to fail because it has the capacity to transfer its technology and knowledge of nuclear understanding.
The Americans pretty much know Pakistan inside out.
In today's episode, we are joined by Dr. Dattesh Parulekar, a distinguished professor of international relations at Goa University and one of the sharpest minds studying India's place in a shifting world order. This conversation takes us straight into the heart of geopolitics, the growing challenges India faces from the United States and China, how Delhi must recalibrate its approach towards Pakistan, India's quiet but vital support to its neighbors, the deepening partnership with Africa, and India's emerging role as a rising power with global responsibilities. It's a dialogue that cuts through the noise and looks at the strategic choices before us as India steps into a decisive moment in history. Stay with us. This is an episode you wouldn't want to miss. Without further ado, let's get started. Before we dive into today's conversation, I want to take a quick moment and ask for a favor. We noticed that 93% of you who watch our content regularly aren't subscribed yet. My promise to you is simple. If you hit that subscribe button, we'll keep working hard to bring thought-provoking conversations, incredible guests, and the topics you really care about the most. It is practically free for you, but it makes a huge difference for us, helping us grow, reach more people, and bring even better content your way. Thank you for supporting. It means the world to us. Now let's get back to the video. Dr. Parulekar, welcome to Dive for Publisher, and I'm honored to have you here today, sir.
Thank you, Shivam. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Look forward for our conversation. It's mainly going to be about change in the geopolitical landscape. But before that, I would love to get your analysis on how India is doing in the global affairs at the moment.
Yeah, so let's put it this way, that this is a challenging moment in world affairs. And as a rising middle power, India has to navigate the minefield of geopolitics like many other middle powers have to. What are the specific challenges that India faces and what are the opportunities right now? The first thing is the US-Russia axis is really in dysfunction. For the last 35 years since the end of the Cold War, and this is an honest belief that many in the strategic community have, that the United States establishment, the Beltway as they call it in Washington, D.C., has never really been able to see Russia as being different from the Soviet Union.
Agreed.
So they continue to see the Russians as a pathological adversary, and therefore the relationship has only degenerated in the last 3 decades, particularly since Putin came in 2000. It's never been really great. This relationship shows no signs of improving. So that's one problem India has, because in terms of India's national development and national security aspirations, there's no doubt that the United States has a very important role to play. I would say there is probably no other country individually which can be a partner, strategic partner for India in terms of addressing its national security imperatives and its national development aspirations. But at the same time, Russia remains a very important strategic partner.
Correct.
So, at a time when the relationship is in strife, how should India balance and where is the tipping point? That's always going to be a challenge for the likes of our External Affairs Minister and the diplomatic corps.
But that's always been the case, hasn't it?
It has been, but it's particularly now because things are in this current situation. You have a Russia-Ukraine war. Uh, of course, the Americans have been putting sanctions on Russia. They've been trying to put the squeeze on Russia. Putin has made it very clear that there is no question of any negotiation with the United States in terms of its establishment. Trump is finding it very difficult because he's caught between a kind of a rock and a hard place. He promised to end the war within 24 hours. That's long gone. And now he says it's not my war to end. So if it doesn't end, it's on Biden's watch.
Hmm.
So you have this very difficult situation, and it looks like, at least for the foreseeable future, relationships are not going to be great. The second one is U.S. China. That's another challenge for India. So while U.S. Russia is important, U.S. China. Now, what happens here? These are the two big economies of the world. 28 trillion plays 19 trillion. But I'm not getting into GDP numbers only. GDP numbers are only a number at the end of the day. It's what they bring to the table individually and collectively.
Hmm.
Both of these countries put together are gladiators when it comes to manufacturing. They are now gladiators when it comes to technology. They are gladiators when it comes to finance, all these important areas. They are gladiators when it comes to chasing these critical minerals and rare earths, rare earth minerals. So there is one element, is this geostrategic competition, which is very intense between these two countries. And yet, there is also the possibility that these countries can do a grand bargain, which means, as they have been now suggesting on trade, they initially started with tit-for-tat sanctions, tit-for-tat tariffs, and they kept ratcheting up the tariffs to almost 150%. It looked almost kiddish. Then they stepped back from the brink. Now we've had 2 rounds of talks, and now we are hearing that a third round has been also suggested in Stockholm. And the deadline to bring about a trade deal has now been deferred, US and China, to August 22nd. When US and China get into very vigorous trade, tit-for-tat sanctions and tariffs, it hurts India because it hurts the global market. Okay, and the global economy softens up, and obviously India has a problem. If these two guys do a grand bargain, then it again leaves India in the cold. Because India has been hoping that at a time when the world wants to diversify its supply chains away from China, that India will become the natural default option. Now, if these two guys do some kind of a grand bargain between them, the G2 as they call it, and I'm not speaking out of thin air, because let me go back to 2009, although it's quite some time back, but this is instructive lessons. Hu Jintao was on a visit to the United States. He was received ahead of protocol by none less than the then Vice President Joe Biden. Normally, vice presidents don't go to the airport to receive anybody. If it's a state visit, you will have the chief of staff of the US president. This was Joe Biden going and receiving Hu Jintao. At the meeting with Obama, what surprised and spooked India was they actually said, and this is Obama said this, that I believe US and China can have a good, honest, transparent dialogue on South Asia. Now, it caught India's goat, because who are these two countries to speak for South Asia? If at all, there is a regional power, India. But the United States is saying we'll talk to an extra-regional power, China, about the future and the health of South Asia. India had to hit back and say that there is no room for these kind of things in South Asia. So there has been a tendency of these two countries to see pragmatism, to see reason, after ratcheting up tensions, to posture and then to find a grand bargain. If they do find a grand bargain, it's going to be difficult for us.
But neither of them could trust each other, is what I see.
Yes. So what happens is, so let's put it this way. This is a very unique global competition. And why am I saying this? At $19 trillion economy, China is 70% of the United States. Never ever in the history of the world, when two gladiators have been at each other, has there ever been this kind of a situation where the peer power, the lesser power, but the peer power, is at 70% of the GDP of the preponderant power. China is sitting on huge cash reserves. China is sitting on huge forex reserves. Technologically, they're still doing wonders. I mean, it's there for everyone to see.
Yeah.
So, and the most important point here is, unlike the Soviet Union, which had no chokehold on America, the Chinese have a chokehold on the United States because much of America's strategic industries depend on rare earths and critical minerals coming out of China. In fact, a particular report had shown us some time back that as many as 262 small components and ingredients that go into the American defense industry come directly out of China. Either it's in terms of critical minerals or in terms of the supply chain. Now, when you have a country like China that is so, plugged into your economy, how far can you go and posture against them? You can do tit for tat to a point, but beyond that, you will have to see reason. So that's the worry that India faces. I think this is the second challenge India faces. But the opportunity that India has is, in this fight, you have certain parts of the world which are left out. Europe is a big player.
Mhm.
Europe is a big player because Europe wants to come out of the Euro-Atlantic and now play a role in the Indo-Pacific. Like Australia are now beginning to realize the burdens and the stresses of their security alliance with asking too much of a cost to pay. So they're also looking to diversify, but subtly diversify. And in that diversification, India becomes a coveted partner to build a strategic partnership. And then, of course, you have the global south, which is not to be ignored, because when you're looking for these critical minerals and raw materials, etc., you can't look beyond, Africa and Latin America. So there are opportunities, but there are also challenges.
So that's what we're looking at the world at the moment. It's more about interdependence, and most of the big nations are weaponizing interdependence.
When we talk about the China challenge, how do you decode the China challenge? The China challenge is not just in terms of the numbers. It's how they leverage their statecraft backed by these numbers. So China is one sovereign entity that has no compunctions whatsoever in weaponizing areas of dependency. They most recently did that with the pause they put on rare earths.
Yeah.
Right? And that was on us as well. We are hearing now that they have, in fact, decided that they're not going to sell rare earth magnets.
Yeah.
Because they are critical in terms of the motor that goes into the EV. So they have realized that, look, India is going strong on EV, so weaponize.
True.
They have weaponized tourism in the past with the Maldives. When Maldives had a president in 2018, which was Ibrahim Solea, he came to office and, of course, he was a pro-India president and he invited, in fact, Modi for a swearing in. He looked at the various projects that China had invested in and he said, look, this is predatory lending. So I'm going to, for now, I'm going to suspend them. I'm going to want to restructure these loans because we can't accept the debt we are in. China told them, look, you can't do this. We will drag you to the court of arbitration. That's, of course, the legal route. But they also told him if we can use other options as well. Now, he didn't realize what other options are. He said, look, nothing doing. I'm suspending them pending a full-scale review. China simply issued a advisory. And there an advisory doesn't mean an advisory. It means it's a coercion. No Chinese tourists to visit the Maldives. Now, until COVID struck, 300,000 Chinese would visit Maldives every year. That's 25,000 a month. That's 800 a day. If I bring it down, that's 3, flight loads of people almost coming into Maldives every day. And the Chinese tourists would spend. So they're spenders. Suddenly you take away 300,000 tourists. What happens to the Maldives? It is going to sink. And all of a sudden there were protests and Ibrahim Soleh had to walk back on his own idea. Same happened with South Korea in 2016 when they had a president called Park Geun-hye. Of course, she got impeached later. She wanted to bring the terminal high-altitude air defense system, which they were also trying to sell to us, the Americans, the THAAD. So it was THAAD versus the S-400. We chose the S-400. So, they said, look, they told the South Koreans, this is very good for you. She said, okay, I'm taking this. I think it's good for me. The Chinese told them, if you bring this on board and if you operationalize it, it is going to change the conventional balance of power in the region, which is unacceptable. It's a red line you're crossing. She disregarded the Chinese objection. China said, okay. Those THAAD components came into South Korea. They were not yet operationalized, but they came into South Korea. And what Xi Jinping did was, again, there was an advisory. No Chinese tourists to visit Jeju Island. Jeju Island survives on Chinese tourists. Without Chinese tourists, they will not be able to breathe. Within a week or two, there were massive protests all around South Korea saying, look, this is not the price we're willing to pay.
Hmm.
and she had to return those the third component. So they weaponized. They weaponized it in
But
Australia.
this is just tourism that they're weaponizing, but they're also weaponizing a lot of rivers these days. We recently heard about the dam that they're trying to build in Brahmaputra.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, sir?
And in fact, the latest on it is that they have made it very clear. They've just announced that the dam is going ahead, that no objection has any merit, either India or any other country. And they've just, I think, reacted to Pema Khandu's statement by saying this is an internal matter of our sovereignty.
Hmm.
It's not for anyone else to talk. As far as we are concerned, we can build what we want to. And according to us, this is the Chinese view, there is going to be no downward damage in terms of water diversion.
Hmm.
So clearly, they are never willing to accept any accommodation where they feel that they have their existential national interests. And I'll tell you this, good you asked me this question. This is precisely why India's position of not joining the BRI must be understood. I say this because even I hear it, every now and then from, I won't name the quarters, but in certain quarters, people do ask me, officers, sometimes diplomats, etc., people on the ground, uh, look, the BRI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. What are we getting by staying out? So my point is, look, it's just twofold. It's very easy. One, it's a clear violation of your sovereignty. CPEC violates through POK. Are you willing to just accommodate a violation of sovereignty and therefore end up relinquishing your sovereignty on POK? If you accept that position and join the BRI, what you're effectively saying is the POK doesn't belong to you. It's dispute. Enter a dispute that we do have, right? That's one. But second point is, China says BRI is a partnership. I want to hold their feet to the fire on this word partnership. What is a partnership? A partnership is when both sides have the ability and are respected to shape that initiative. This is not partnership. This is co-option. What the Chinese want to do is they want to co-opt you in the name of partnership. So it's believed that we did ask them when they did make this point to us about partnership, you must join. We said, look, do we have the right to suggest alternative alignments? Will you accept that? You will accept nothing. You only want us to sign on the blank check. So even though it is a fact that BRI is causing a lot of issues for India in the neighborhood, and it's probably going to be here to stay, it's not going to go anywhere, certain positions have to be taken in national interest. Now, in the case of the hydro-hegemony that they're talking about, it is a difficult thing to do, but what probably the best we can do is one, deliver on the hydropower projects that are currently at various stages of completion in Bhutan and Nepal. Second is, I know Bangladesh right now is a difficult country to deal with, and we were hoping initially that when this first thing came up, Sheikh Hasina was still around last year. So we were hoping that we could bring Bhutan, Bangladesh, which was friendly to us, and possibly even KP Oli, because he's now supported by the Nepali Congress. So there is some control that probably India has on him. Bring Nepal into the picture and have some kind of a four-way dialogue. Develop a common position and pressurize China to say, look, these four countries all are concerned about your, the dam that they're building. And so these four countries have a unified position.
That won't change anything when it comes to what China wants to do.
Yeah, so at least you will test them, because at the end of the day, they also need to have equities in these countries, right? So what, of course, they will play their tricks like they're doing with Bhutan right now, and they're pressurizing Bhutan. Bhutan's accepted Xizang as a formulation. So Tibet is now being called Xizang by the Bhutanese officially now. Yeah, that happened recently. So it has kind of, spooked India. But we understand that Bhutan is under severe pressure from China, right? And so we know that's happening. But you're looking at, the best possible alternatives. Of course, keep dialoguing China for them to see reason. Probably they'll not see reason. Try to bring some pressure from the other neighbors so that China will probably mend. But I think based on what they've now said, that they're going ahead and this plan will be executed, I don't see how things are going to change.
So there are a lot of different domains that, that threats, there's a threat perception for India when it comes to China. If you were to narrow down three domains that we should focus on and safeguard our interest in respect to China, what would that be, sir?
Yeah, so look, I mean, it's always very difficult to narrow down, let's say 2, 3, 4, because China is a comprehensive challenge, right? It's not a unidimensional or a bidimensional challenge, not even a multidimensional. Secondly, when China acts, nature of this entity when it acts is all of state. It's not all of government, it's all of state, right? Because government is state and state is government there. When we say all of state, it means they use every lever in the book against you to undermine you.
Yeah.
But if you ask me to narrow down 3 areas, I would say the first and most important area is deep sea, our maritime scape.
That's China is doing a lot there.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm not in any way reducing the importance of our land borders. Galwan has shown us that yes, there are frozen conflicts which can be, made alive. But the fact remains the real place where they can hurt us is our economy. Our economy doesn't get hurt necessarily by Galwan happening. Yeah, okay, we bleed a little more in terms of putting troops on the border. It doesn't hurt our economy directly. But anything that they do in our maritime scape, right? We now have a recomputation of our coastline. It's now 11,098 kilometers. It's no longer 7,516. So that's much more responsibility for us now to safeguard our best interests. We also have 1,389 island features, which we have to protect on both sides. I mean, you take Andaman, Nicobar and Lakshadweep, the two chains, island chains, that's 1,389 features, right? And many of them are beyond bounds. But more importantly, you have a 2.1 million square kilometer exclusive economic zone. The Chinese have been increasingly, sending their survey and research vessels, transgressing your EEZ, berthing and docking in Sri Lanka in the past, trying to go to Maldives, trying to take control of certain islands. So that's one aspect. But within that maritime scape, China is making tremendous advancements when it comes to comprehensive sea control. Please understand, in 2015...
In terms of trade routes and choke points?
Yeah, so I'll tell you how it means. In 2015, when China decided to come out with its maritime doctrine, then it came out with white papers, etc. They defined their maritime doctrine as comprehensive sea control. Now, what does comprehensive sea control mean? So, comprehensive sea control, of course, they haven't said this, but you can decode their behavior. It means 3 things. It means that they want to control what plies on the seas, which is, of course, the trade routes that you mentioned, shipping lanes. They want to control what is at sea, which means ports, because they are situated, they don't change, and they are there and you can see them. And most critical, they want to go subsea and control. So I would say the 3 things of sea control are shipping lanes and trade routes, as we say. Second, port infrastructure. So creating a network of ports and then controlling the logistics and all in key choke points. And third is
the minerals
and deep sea cables.
Oh,
because this is where they really are, fighting and competing with the United States. I'll give you one example just as a detour. They were, until recently, putting a major cable at the bottom of the ocean from Shanghai to Valparaiso in Chile, across the breadth of the Pacific. And that would have made it one of the biggest, if not the biggest cables in the world. Now, they are known to lay cables, so it was an audacious one, but China has done so many audacious things in the past.
It's also known to disrupt these cables.
Yes, exactly. So that's the point. So they will lay their own, and they're the only country which has said we have an army of hackers. Officially. I mean, I know countries have hackers in cyberspace and all, but no countries go out and say this is an army unit.
They train their cyber.
They, in fact, have been saying we'll not sign the space debris agreement. They've not signed the space debris agreement, which is an agreement that is signed normally by countries in space in the event you have debris, how to control debris and to bring them down in a controlled form rather than dropping anywhere. They're saying we're not signing it. So they are going to demand things on their own terms. So what has happened is this Valparaiso to Shanghai cable, which was being sought of course, since Trump came, he's managed to, snap the cable, not literally, figuratively. So it's gone. And in return now, the Chileans are being pushed into accepting a cable that comes from Australia.
Is it?
Oh yeah, Australia to Chile, and here the United States is going to be involved and Western countries are going to be involved. So, sometimes you have to see for competition very far from what you see. So I would say this is the challenge number 1, that is at sea. The second challenge is in the information and communication space. I'll tell you, in 2014, when Xi Jinping came to India, I remember talking to Minister Suresh Prabhu that time, who was then the railway minister. One of the agenda items in the joint communique was that India and China would collaborate in the railway space. Now, we know they are leaders when it comes to railways, right? They have a dedicated railway university where they train people. I mean, can you imagine? So it's like almost, we have an IRS, okay, railway service. But so we agreed initially, we said, okay, let's do this. And one of the things we had kind of agreed broadly was, we'll allow them to enter railway signaling and railway communication. They would help us in that. Okay, unmanned stations and all. And then suddenly, I think when we went back and looked at the fine print, I think we only realized what have we signed on to, because we didn't move on it. The Chinese kept asking what happened. It's been a month now. They like to move quickly. The matter went to CCS. It was clearly decided. There's no question of allowing China into any of the sensitive areas. And railways is sensitive. Because in the event of a war, which is the medium that is going to transport your logistics, is going to be railways. They'll disable your railways before they go to war. And you won't even understand where it's come from. Sometime back, if you recall, Mumbai, there was an outage, a power outage for some time. Now, sometime back, there was also a compromising of Singapore's health records a few years ago. And Singapore declared that, look, they have all their health records are digitalized, including the previous prime minister. And they declared that all their health records have got compromised because of a malware. The malware again was traced back to North Korea. Now, why would, Kim Jong-un be so interested in compromising Singapore's health records? That's not his priority, right? So same with Mumbai. I don't think he cares a damn about Mumbai. It's clearly the Chinese. There can be nobody else. It has got to be the Chinese doing this. So the information, propaganda, communication, this kind of decapitation, that's second. Because we have Hikvision cameras as well here. We're now trying to get them out from many of our sensitive locations, but you have put them there. That's a second one. And the third, of course, is their ability to blend trade-based investment. See, there are two kinds of investment. Yes, there are two kinds of investments that happen. Investment of one kind which happens, which is investment in manufacturing. You invest in a country because you can make money, right? So right now we are asking the UAE and Saudi Arabia, Qatar, all the Gulf countries to invest in India, right? They're not investing so that they can trade in India. They are investing because they're sitting on trillions of dollars of sovereign wealth funds. Those wealth funds, just keeping them parked away is not going to give them any interest. India gives a good, rate of return right now, right? Because economy is doing well. So if they invest it here, they make more money on it. At the same time, that investment goes into certain strategic sectors of India's manufacturing, like into refining facility, building more refineries, putting it into our national infrastructure pipeline fund, etc. That's only investment in manufacturing or investment which is there to make money. The Chinese investment is in critical sectors where once they make that investment, they then use that investment in that facility to make that country trade with China on that particular item. So that's why I say it is investment which is trade-based. Now, what that does, this investment actually makes you dependent directly on China. So when they look to invest in the manufacturing sector, they just simply don't go and build anything.
They're doing it everywhere, though, in South America, Africa,
etc. But it hurts us more in South Asia because obviously we trade with our neighbors. Of course, here are Pakistan, but with Nepal and with Bangladesh and all of them. Trade is a big issue for us because we have boundaries. And what happens is if they start doing this, then the exact reason why we have stepped out of RCEP. I mean, why did we step out of RCEP? Yes, I know that, publicly speaking, we did not get the kind of receptiveness for our concerns and our interests that we wanted, like opening up markets for our goods, particularly opening up migration and mobility for our skilled labor. But that's one side of the story. One of the main reasons we cannot be in an RCEP-like framework is we've already paid the price for an FTA with ASEAN, as Minister Goyal has said. China has used these countries to basically infiltrate our country through trade. So what is coming out of Vietnam is not Vietnamese goods, it's Chinese goods through Vietnam. What's coming from Indonesia, this has happened and there's data to show that. So this is called diversion, which is why you might have seen Trump has put a 20% tax on Vietnam as a tariff, and that's a lever in negotiations. But he has said transshipment is 40%.
Okay. So
and he's punishing Vietnam, a country with whom he has a strategic partnership, because he knows that Vietnam today has become the gateway for Chinese goods to, if those which cannot go directly from China to US, will go through Vietnam. So if Mexico is the problem next door for United States, Vietnam is the problem in ASEAN for the United States, and same for us as well. So this is the problem. So if they start trading in Nepal, etc., given the transboundary, porousness we have, these goods will continue to flood and continue to kill us. And the deficit, which is anyway bad today, is only going to get worse and worse and worse. So I would say these are the three areas here.
Got it. So from here, since you were speaking on China, you must also talk about our other neighbors. And we always, since PM Modi's last 10 years, we've been focusing on neighborhood first.
Yeah.
How do you assess our relationship with different countries? And do you think we have given enough importance to our neighborhood?
Yes. So let's put it this way. First of all, I think Prime Minister Modi deserves, great compliments for fashioning the kind of neighborhood first policy that he did. I think one of the big refrains in Indian foreign policy has that despite of being, I won't say a dominant country, but a large country, an influential country in our neighborhood.
We've been seen as a big brother also a lot of times.
Yeah, we've been seen as a big brother, sometimes even as a gendarme, a kind of a regional power. And right or wrong, we've not been able to use levers of statecraft
Hmm.
to shape our own immediate environment to our needs. Every country has to shape its own environment, has to find its own modus vivendi. Prime Minister Modi started off brilliantly with that, commissioning of the SAG satellite through ISRO. It was a unilateral offer that he made immediately after he became Prime Minister to all countries. Of course, Pakistan didn't take it, but the others welcomed it. And I say this because in 1971, when a young liberated Bangladesh is believed to have, this is what I've heard from somebody like Ambassador Parsarthi in the past, when they asked India for meteorological data to be shared with them, Mujibur Rahman asked Indira Gandhi. Indira Gandhi was not unable to give it because the bureaucrats said, no, ma'am, we cannot share this. National security reasons. Just meteorological data, I mean, rainfall data, right? Come to 2014 and we are not only sharing meteorological data, we're actually saying take a satellite. See how things have changed, right? Since then, in the last 10 years, or let's say 11 years, there have been some ups and downs, but generally speaking, we've also done something very interesting. Prime Minister Modi got his then Principal Secretary Nipendra Mishra to do a rostering of all the various projects of various ticket sizes that were pending in our neighborhood, which we had not completed. So these go back to the time of Prime Minister Vajpayee, maybe even in the case of Gujral and Deve Gowda. And I had my own, kind of experience once when I was in Nepal, when one of the former prime ministers whom I had the opportunity to meet, I won't name him, he actually said to me, he said, Datteshji, if you can tell Prime Minister Modi something, then please tell him. We all love him. We welcome, the fact that he's Prime Minister of India and he's very popular here. We want to receive him here. But ask him not to make any new promises, just complete the old promises of previous prime ministers, particularly going back to Prime Minister Vajpayee, because it's his own prime minister of his own government. Now, what does it tell you? India's credibility in terms of execution was at its lowest ebb. And when you're up against a country like China, it's going to be a falling option. So what Prime Minister did, and again, credit to him, he saw that there were more than 100 projects of various ticket sizes that were pending. He got Foreign Secretary Jaishankar, Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj, and he himself reviewed many of these projects to see that they get executed and completed. So that was a big plus in terms of resurrecting our credibility in the region. He also gave a lot of importance to connectivity, and connectivity is physical connectivity, but also digital connectivity. Mr. Modi's famous line early on when he became Prime Minister was, from highways to highways. Highways as in highways that we know, highways are information highways.
Yeah.
So he's been very big on the digital revolution. And credit to him for the fact in which he was able to not just bring digitalization to India, but also offer this digitalization neighbors. So for example, now he's going to be in the Maldives from tomorrow. And we are hearing that in all likelihood, Mali is going to embrace India's UPI. That will make it probably the 28th country in the world to accept India's UPI. We just had Namibia accepted as well. Now that is India's tech stack. Countries have begun to now see a lot of merit in what India does. But at the same time, there are going to be, situations that are beyond our control. What happened in Bangladesh is probably beyond our control. I mean, what could you have done? Of course, probably, if Sheikh Hasina had seen some more merit in the protest, she might have acted differently. But we can't help it. You can't help regimes changing in different parts of South Asia. But let me tell you, some very interesting things are happening. India now in this third Modi term, and this is my assessment, has adopted a very pragmatic line on South Asia.
That is?
The idea here is, even if a leader is leaning towards China, which is fair enough, he can choose his own, places to lean to, let's not necessarily consider him as anti-India.
That's true. That's true.
It's not zero-sum. If you're going to look at it as zero-sum, you're going to end up with a zero most often. Because the leaning towards China is bound to be there. But I want to give you a couple of examples, and one is Dissanayaka in Sri Lanka.
We are not moved by any of the country. We are not shaken when we see any other a neighborhood going towards China.
Yeah, so of course, I mean, in the case of Pakistan, yes, the anxieties are there. Bangladesh is a bigger anxiety because it's not leaning China. Then the man's just gone and talked bonkers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he went to China and said, we can both act together and choke India in the Northeast. I mean, this language is not a language of leaning. This is virtually going and sitting in the lap of China.
Hmm.
He even goes and says that, China should make us a condominium. Okay, Mohammed Yunus. So he's a different kettle of fish. I want to use the two examples of Dissanayaka in Sri Lanka and Muizu now in the Maldives. When Muizu first came to office, it was India out campaign.
Yeah.
Right? And he was not willing to accept anything. If you look at his background, he was the infrastructure minister in Yamin's government. And at that time, a lot of Chinese infrastructure into Maldives came because of this gentleman, not so much because of Yamin. So the Chinese felt we've got the right man and we can do a lot. But what happened was, he said no to Indian troops and he said, I want Indian troops out. We tried to convince him. He didn't get convinced. We had to move troops out. He then took a very pragmatic line because when he looked at the overall picture, he realized, why should I just kick the Indians out? That will leave me with no options with China, right? I should have some bargaining card to play with. So what he said was no to Indian troops and defense platforms, yes to Indian investments. And that's why the Adani project of Greater Malay Connectivity, which is over $500 million project, which is being done by Adani, has continued despite Muizu being in office. And last October, when Muizu came for a state visit to India, he actually publicly said it at Hyderabad House that I will allow defense platforms and assets of a specific kind from India to return and remain in Maldives. Now, this change is also important. Why? Because when he said India out, we did not discard him. We cultivated him. We engaged him.
Yes.
Jaishankar went there and engaged him immediately. That was brilliant.
We even invited them for swearing ceremony.
And not only that, one hears that subsequently when the Rashtrapati Bhavan banquet happened, the way the seating arrangement was done, of course, that's in the hands of Rashtriya Bhavan and the government, President Muizu was placed at the side of Prime Minister Modi. So he got enough face time, almost an hour or 2 hours of talking. And that can always break the ice. And we know how charming Prime Minister Modi is, in a one-on-one setting. So the point really is here that we managed to, rein him in. So I'm not saying he's not leaning China. He's very much leaning China, but he's not anti-India as it shows now.
Anymore, yeah.
Dissanayaka in Sri Lanka is the same thing. When he won, literally terrified people like us because my sense was, look, this guy's a communist. The American ambassador used to meet him, the Chinese ambassador used to meet him so very often in the lead up to the election that almost China was saying he's our man, right? And what happens? After getting elected, we were watching. Does he go to China first? Does he come to India first? He continued the practice that all Sri Lankan leaders do of coming to India first. And he said, India is brother, China is friend. That's a typical Chinese Sri Lankan line. But interestingly, what he said was, he said to Prime Minister Modi, as a Sri Lankan, I'm a Sri Lankan first. And we all are indebted to you and India for doing for us what nobody else did in 2022 when we went through the crisis. You stood like a rock, like an elder brother with us. We are grateful for that. And for that, even though we can always have ideological issues, I assure you, he said, I will not allow Chinese survey vessels and, intelligence gathering vessels to dock in Sri Lanka.
The ports are controlled by Chinese though.
No, the Hambantota port is of course with them. That's a different, but Hambantota doesn't matter because it's down south. So if they go to Hambantota, they're not really closer to India, they're further away from India, right? Colombo is an issue, so that's where the problem is. But he has ensured, we have seen this in at least a couple of occasions, Chinese ships have been wished away. Very politely, they've been told, sorry, these vessels will not be allowed because India is feeling anxious and worried. And it is Sri Lanka's duty to respect Indian sensitivities. So again, what we did, a leaning China president was not made to be an anti-India president. And that's why I would say that this is a success story of Prime Minister Modi in the Maldives and in Sri Lanka in the current context. But it is always going to be a challenge. Just as we see this, we see the Chinese gathering with Bangladesh and Pakistan to create an alternative for SARC.
Yeah.
Now, we don't know if it will work. People have said this is a far-fetched idea. I mean, how can you keep India out and build something around the periphery? But even if they don't build something institutionally, the Chinese can do a lot through other machinations, right? To create enough trouble and to create alternatives by keeping India out. I'll give an example of what they do. For last 3 Decembers, December 22, 23 and 24, in Kunming, China hosted the Indian Ocean Blue Economy Forum. Now, China is not an Indian Ocean country. It's a Pacific country. It's clearly telling India, I'm going to be in your backyard, doing things that are required for the smaller nations, almost challenging India in its backyard, right? They've done it for 3 years now. Maldives, Sri Lanka have been visiting. Of course, they've still not really begun working. But the point is, they have not invited India to that Indian Ocean Forum. If they genuinely believe that this is non-India, they should have invited India. Let India say no. By not inviting India to an Indian Ocean Blue Economy Forum,
Yeah.
what you're effectively saying is you want to build a bulwark against India in the region. Now, whether that will happen, only time will tell.
So, do you want to touch Sagar and Mahasagar as well, since you spoke about
Yeah,
the Indian
so-
Ocean region and the security
absolutely.
there?
Absolutely. I mean, look, and I made this point earlier today as well when I was speaking in the conference of St. Joe's. Just look at Sagar. Again, brilliant ideation. And this is non-hegemonic, non-antagonistic. Let me make this point. Prime Minister Modi's government has always said from the very outset, there are certain principles that underpin our investment strategies in countries, not just neighboring countries, all countries. The first thing is when we invest in any country, we will try to get the broadest possible political acceptance for that project. So, of course, speak to the government, but also, in a sense, work with the opposition to see that this project doesn't become a particular president's project. It is Sri Lanka's project. It's not Dissanayaka's project. It is Maldives' project. It is not Muizu's project. That's it. The Chinese do it differently. For them, they just do a deal with the person on the ground,
Yeah.
and then they say the next person comes in, maybe they may want to bribe him again, right? So there is always the possibility of resistance, etc. There has been no real resistance to Sri Lankan projects, even Maldivian projects, from the people. Okay, we've never seen popular protest against it because India follows this principle. Second, we make it sure that it's financially viable. Third, ecologically conscious. Fourth, it is need-based and demand-driven, not superimposed from the top. And the fifth point is very important. When we deliver a project, it is not excluding anybody else. It's non-exclusionary,
Yeah.
non-antagonistic. When the Chinese enter any country, they may not publicly say it, but we know what the implicit message is. Put the Indians out, we'll come in. And the best example is Maldives in 2012. GMR had got the contract to build the Malé airport. China toppled Nasheed. The Vice President Wahid, the first thing he does, he scraps GMR's project and gives it to China. What does it mean? China could have taken some other airport. So China wanted that airport at the cost of India.
Yeah.
India doesn't believe in exclusionary or antagonistic behavior. And that's why Sagar is that concept. So Sagar stands for security and growth for all in the region. The ideation is brilliant because these are two very important universal impulses for any country. Whether it's a preponderant country like the United States or a country like India or even a small country like, let's say, Mauritius or Seychelles. For any country in the maritime realm, it's always about maritime security and maritime economy, which is growth, right? So this principle of security and growth for all in the region meant collective solutions for collective problems in the maritime domain. For 10 years, we have done quite a lot of work. Let's not compare it with BRI because that's what happens. Normally, people go and compare with the MSR, the Maritime Silk Road, and say, oh, MSR has done so much, you haven't done. I think this tit for tat is not required. We are a $4.5 trillion economy. China is a $19 trillion economy. They have deeper pockets than we have. They have the industrial power to build like nobody else. They have technological injection like nobody else. So let's accept those advantages they have. So let's not get into a tit for tat. What are we doing? We have delivered projects of various ticket sizes across these countries. We have in fact worked to provide capacity building and capability enhancement to small island nations. In 2015, when Prime Minister hosted the Pacific Islands Forum in Jaipur, again, a brilliant line from Prime Minister Modi when he said, you are not small island states. You are large ocean states. Brilliant line.
Yeah.
And that's the way India wants smaller countries. No, we want to empower smaller countries. So what we told them, yes, you're physically small. That's a fact. But remember, you might be small, but your islands have got a large exclusive economic zone. So your waters are your territory as well.
Sweet.
Right? So don't think of yourself as small island states. Think of yourself as large ocean states. And to that extent, India will work to deliver on capacity building and capability enhancement. Since 2017, India has shown the ability to work with various countries in the world to deliver on Sagar goals. In 2017, we co-chartered with France the International Solar Alliance. Now, you might say, what does Solar Alliance have to do with maritime? But it does. because the way in which the whole project is, is envisaged, we call it one sun, one world, one grid. Okay. Basically, what it means is you will capture solar energy, you will store it, and then you will have it transmitted through the high voltage direct currents, which will take it to different parts of the world. So ultimately, they will be transmitted not through space or on ground, but they're going to be transmitted at the bottom of the sea. So there is a maritime component to it. So Sagar is about sustainability. When you take this kind of solar energy to poorer countries, it is helping you deal with energy costs, which is breaking the back of many impoverished people. Then look at what was done in 2018. We put together what is called as a coalition for disaster resilient infrastructure with the United States. This is a public-private partnership compact, okay, where both the private sector and government come together and build disaster resilient infrastructure. When the Bhuj earthquake happened in Gujarat, okay, it was said that we should have, looked at what the Japanese have done. And that time, as Chief Minister of Gujarat, Prime Minister Modi looked at the Japanese model of how Japan has so many tsunamis and earthquakes and from time to time, but rarely do you see Japanese buildings collapsing and people dying in the thousands, because they've managed through technology to make earthquake-resistant houses. And later on, what one understands is in Bhuj, this was brought. So, disaster-resilient infrastructure is a very important initiative with the United States. In 2019, again Sagar framework, India goes to the East Asia Summit in Bangkok and hosts and rather unveils what is called as the IPOI, Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. What is the mantra behind it? The mantra is, in our civilizational understanding, waters have a big role to play, Varuna, right? However, while we do leverage the waters, harness the waters and their wealth in the waters, it is to be done in a responsible manner so that we leave something for posterity.
Yeah.
So harness the ocean wealth, harness blue economy, but do it in a regulated, sustainable manner. This was what was built as the underpinning of IPOI. It was not India's project. Unlike BRI, which is China's project, or the Americans bring something which is a G7 project, or it's an American project. We said we are only the promoters of the project. Whoever wants to join us in this, please come forward, own it along with us, and let's drive it together. And it's heartening to see that this IPOI, at least in terms of signatories, has got signatories not only from ASEAN countries. Australia has signed on to it. France, Germany, UK have signed on to it. So you can see the US has not signed on to it, but others have. So if you have an initiative which is based in the Indian Ocean or the Indo-Pacific, which has got a buy-in not only from resident powers, but also from extraterritorial resident powers like France, UK, and of course Germany to a different extent, it tells you the appeal of some projects like this which India puts out under Sagar.
So before we jump continents, we must talk about Pakistan and our recent Operation Sindoor.
Yeah.
And the narrative that was built around it. How do you assess what's your take on India's narrative building in terms of our diplomatic efforts when it comes to Operation Sindoor?
Yeah. So firstly, as we all, I think, universally agree, it was a successful clinical operation in terms of the template that we have set for the military operation part of it, right? And we're all very happy about it, the way in which it was done. It was also a huge, boost for our Atmanirbharta and national self-reliance in terms of how our platforms worked. So that is aside. Now, as far as Indian diplomacy is concerned, yes, let's be honest, it is a challenge, and it has been a challenge, because the fact remains that many countries in the world have chosen to condemn Pahalgam and condemn what has happened, but has not named Pakistan.
Yeah.
Right? Now, one understands their own compulsions. Many countries have come forward and said, look, you don't understand. The moment we name Pakistan, then obviously what is going to happen is many other factors are going to come into play. So then sometimes they have domestic laws which will mandate them to impose sanctions on Pakistan, which can hurt their own interests with some other country, right? That's understood. But every country at the end of the day has tried to look at enlightened national interest. And it's been a tough sell for us. Many countries did ask us for clear, categorical evidence that there was a Pakistani hand. Now, I see absolute, speciousness in this argument. I heard from certain sources that the United States think tanks were asking India that, look, you've not provided us any evidence. The White House also would say you've not given us any evidence that, these terror groups, even that the TRF is a terror group, etc. But recently we saw how they have, put the TRF on the sanctions list.
Yeah.
So they're coming around to that view. Now, I've had this view on Pakistan for quite a long time. I don't buy this view that is expressed in many quarters that Pakistan's going to inevitably balkanize. It's only a matter of time. It may happen in 6 months, 1 year. The media can do whatever it wants, right? They can keep saying what they have to. Strategically speaking, I don't see how Pakistan will be allowed to fail. So I have this view, Pakistan can never succeed. It'll always be the kind of state it is.
Agreed.
Yeah, so it's not going to be your top 10 economy and, they can't turn a corner. They don't have...
That's not the aspirations as well.
Yeah. But while they cannot succeed, like India is succeeding, they will not be allowed to fail. Because there are many vested interests in the world who would like to see a pinprick like Pakistan continue to bog India down. Let me explain this. I remember once the External Affairs Minister being interviewed, I think it was on TV Today or Aaj Tak, and he was doing a 1-hour interview, and Pakistan was the last question asked to him. I think it was 55th or 56th minute of the interview. And he said, "Sir, ek Pakistan pe sawal ho jaye?" So Jaishankar looked and smiled, and he looked at the crowd, and the crowd smiled. So he said, "Kyun has rahe hain, sir?" He said, "मैं इसलिए हंस रहा हूँ, I'm having a chuckle, because शायद ऐसा कभी पहले नहीं हुआ होगा कि पूरे इंटरव्यू में पाकिस्तान का कोई जिक्र ही नहीं हुआ। पाकिस्तान का जिक्र 55th या 56th मिनट में हो रहा है। This was before पहलगाम and all. यही दर्शाता है कि मोदी सरकार ने किस तरह से पाकिस्तान को irrelevant कर दिया, उसको मार्जिनलाइज कर दिया, राइट? कि आप उसको लास्ट पूछ रहे हैं, नहीं तो इसके पहले पाकिस्तान चलता था, राइट? फ्रॉम पॉइंट नंबर 1. That has been a success, how we have done that. To some extent, while that is true, Pakistan's back in the mix. And it so happens with Pakistan, I don't know what to say, it's divine providence or what. Every time they're in the dump and you feel like they're down and out, they resurrect like a phoenix from the ashes. I mean, 2001, 9/11, the Americans were not even looking at them. They'd clearly begun to prioritize India. Clinton came here and the Bush relationship with Vajpayee. And then 9/11 happens. Pakistan comes into prominence. Pakistan becomes relevant. All of a sudden, sanctions are lifted on Pakistan and Pakistan gets emboldened. And then India, after the attack on India's parliament, India is told, please do not do any precipitous action because America wants to prosecute the action in Afghanistan and they need Pakistan's support. Pakistan is emboldened. Again, you feel that, Pakistan was almost down and out. The Taliban returns in 2021 and Pakistan again becomes important. Okay. So Pakistan, and we probably should not be under this belief that Pakistan will inevitably balkanize. If it does, it does. I mean, nothing wrong in that. But it's not going to easily happen. And we have seen that because even countries like Japan had a very sympathetic view with regard to Pakistan's FATF. I mean, that was surprising. The FATF resolution that was moved, where all that we were asking was that they be put back into the grey list. Right? We know that they will not be blacklisted. Even there you see the politics. Everyone knows that Pakistan has not really done anything apart from tokenism and lip service when it comes to terror, fighting terror. Yet the Saudis and the UAEs, who otherwise will be with you on many things, they somehow won't let Pakistan go from the grey list to the blacklist. And last time they were moved out of the grey list. We wanted them back in the grey list. Even that was difficult to do. Of course, we know the embarrassment. I would say embarrassment because we were almost kind of singled out and we were left all by ourselves at the IMF, right? How money was provided. So in that sense, I would say that yes, it is a challenge. It's also a wake-up call for Indian diplomacy, right? Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is a very good principle. It's a matter of our conviction and we must drive it in the global south. But Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam without adequate hard power, right? Being liked is not going to help you achieve your national interest.
Yes,
you should be liked, but you should have the power and then you should be liked.
So good balance between idealism and realism.
And a good balance between hard power and soft power. So we have to literally put our head down. And that's why I do believe that pulling the plug on that conflict was the right thing to do. Because look, we would love to have the peace dividend that China got from, 1980 till about 2010, 30 years, or 1990, let's say, when they could just grow at 10%, 11%. We won't get that, right? But we need some kind of a peace for our economy to grow. And if we get bogged down in a war like Russia, Ukraine, fighting it for 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, it's only going to set our economy back.
Hmm.
So we got to double down over the next 5 or 10 years,
Yeah.
grow our economy, and then things will improve.
Sir, since you mentioned about Pakistan being too dangerous to fail,
Yeah.
I've got a theory. If you can validate for me, what your thoughts are on it, that the West doesn't want Pakistan to fail because it has the capacity to transfer its technology and knowledge of nuclear understanding to the wrong hands. Is there something in the right direction?
Look, this is definitely a view that has been bandied along for a long time. Trump is saying the same thing now. He's trying to make that, a case that, oh, this could have gone nuclear, it would have gone out of hand. The Americans pretty much know what the Pakistanis are up to, right? The nuclear assistance may have come to a large extent from China lately, but the Americans pretty much know Pakistan inside out. Nobody knows Pakistan inside out than the Americans do.
True.
When they needed to get Osama bin Laden killed, they got him killed in Abbottabad, right? Inside the headquarters, without even the Pakis knowing. So when they want to do things, they can do it. So I think this is a fig leaf. This is an excuse and an alibi. In fact, if Pakistan is up to some hanky-panky with regard to the nuclear issue, particularly in terms of proliferation, there is enough evidence that the Americans, if they have the political will, could do to Pakistan what the Israelis did to Iraq in 1981 in the Osirak nuclear reactor. And in a worst case scenario, it could also be done what was done to Fordow, right? If Iran's nuclear missile or a nuclear weapon is a great danger, why would Pakistan, which has a much more organized country and an organized army, and a country not under sanctions? See, Iran's at least been under sanctions, right? They have a very organized IRGC, but they've been under sanctions. Pakistan is not that. Pakistan's been getting money from everywhere. Okay. So Pakistan's nuclear program should be a bigger threat to the United States and to peace-loving countries. So you are willing to use the 30,000 pound bomb in Fordow for Israel, but you're willing to make an alibi out of the nuclear issue here with India. It again brings us back to the question, is the India-US relationship necessarily in good hands?
India-US.
India-US.
Yeah, because recently we saw Field Marshal Munir visit the White House, and the relationship bolstered it well. And what do you assess of this, that the US are cozying with Pakistan?
So there are different readings on this. The most plausible reading that was that, look, in the lead up to that, in fact, the lead up to the Pahalgam atrocity and then Operation Sindoor, there were meetings between Shahbaz Sharif and Donald Trump's son, and there was some business dealings.
Cryptocurrency.
Exactly, some crypto investments, etc. But I mean, those things happen not only in Pakistan, they happen all over the world. Trump business dealings have always been shady. So I don't know how much to believe only in that. I mean, crypto, they can get it done from anywhere else. There's also been a view that probably critical minerals is also something that they're looking at in POK.
Yeah.
Right? If you remember, sometime back, we had heard that lithium is available in J&K. Of course, we're not able to extract it. Now we're hearing in the Northeast there's lithium. We don't know how true or not. But if, let's say, lithium is available in J&K, then maybe it's probably only plausible that if it's available in J&K, it must be in POK as well. There must be something. And probably Trump wants to do a DRC or a Ukraine-like deal. So he looks at, Munir as some kind of Zelensky.
But Trump isn't that visionary that he would look that ahead.
No, I don't think it's visionary. He's just being greedy. He's shown a pocket and he's shown, look, this is a pocket where you can get something.
Got it.
I think the fact that he's not visionary is shown by the fact that he's willing to actually prioritize a failed general, not a field marshal, a failed marshal, right, of a failed state, if not a dysfunctional state, over a statesman like Prime Minister Modi. And forget Prime Minister Modi, the larger interest of India. If he cannot see what India-US relations can do, and he thinks that Pakistan can deliver more, it just shows you that, probably he's very narrow-minded and parochial on this point. But there's a third point here. The Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, which is within about 100 miles from those thorium and lithium mines that is believed to exist in Afghanistan and closer to the China border, the Bagram Air Base is seen as a potential flashpoint. The Americans, in fact, Trump is on record to say, I'm going to somehow ensure that I get back to Bagram. That means he'll probably do a back channel with Taliban. And Taliban, everybody's accepting Taliban now. We know that. Even that has fallen flat. We'll come to that later. But if that's the case, if he wants the Bagram Air Base so as to put a lot of pressure on the Chinese, he will need somebody to lean on Taliban. Now, I know that we have heard reports that Taliban and Pakistan army don't have the best of relations. There have been mutual recriminations and accusations. But leave that aside, broadly speaking, they still remain aligned. So possibly that's another goal. He wants the Bagram air base. He wants to get into Afghanistan's minerals.
Hmm.
He again needs Pakistan. And he says India is of no use to me. So it could be any of these things.
Since we mentioned US,
Yeah.
we've been seeing some difficulties building our trust with India and the US, and now we are seeing another challenge where we could get secondary sanctions
Yeah.
with our dealings with Russia. Your take on that, sir?
Yeah. So this has come from various voices. So certain voices in the US Congress have said so. Certain people in the diplomatic cadre have said so. I would still think this is posturing. This is bluster. This is basically typical Trump, leveraging some kind of a card and then, bending. I don't see how he can essentially put these kind of sanctions and what will it do to his relationships. He's talking of basically not just on India,
Mhm.
but he's talking of Brazil. He's talking of China.
Yeah.
And he's talking of India. Now with Brazil, I can understand he has an absolute degenerative relationship with Lula. In fact, there's this huge face-off going on now with Bolsonaro, Lula, etc. We will not get into that. So that is understandable what he's doing to Brazil and saying to Brazil. With China, obviously he's not going to do that because he's already involved in trade talks with Xi Jinping. So if he's going to do a trade deal and then going to sanction them because of Russia, it's going to basically be, he's going to be trampling his own trade talks and trade, a deal. Even on India, I don't see how that will happen because by all accounts, we do believe that at least a limited deal is going to happen, they say, by September. Maybe not August, but they're saying by September, October. And he keeps saying that a deal with India is very close.
He keeps
He
doing that.
sometimes he keeps
He
saying.
had a deal with Indonesia where he said that there will be 19% tariffs
Yes,
paid by Indonesia to the US and zero
exactly.
by the. And then
exports, yeah.
And then he said that the similar deal is going to be close with India.
India. So he keeps giving all these permutations, combinations. Jaishankar had made it very clear that a deal is not done to please anybody. I mean, he didn't want to say that, you're talking rubbish. But basically what he said was that this is not, a deal is done when both sides are happy with the deal.
Yeah, there's no pressure on it.
There's give and take.
Yeah.
Right? There's reciprocity. So don't come and say that, look, I'm going to have nothing and, he's going to have to pay for everything. That is not the way it happens. So my point is, I think it's still bluster. I still don't believe that the Russia issue is something where Trump is going to go head on because that is going to then spoil his relationship with China, with Russia, with Brazil, with India. These are big powers that the United States needs.
True.
At a time when the United States doesn't want to be a hermit. They still want to trade with the world. If you're going to not trade with China, they will say, we'll stop trading with you. If you're not going to trade with India, you're not going to trade with Brazil, whom are you going to trade with? So I think it's more bluster than anything else.
So when Trump came in power 6 months ago, they were hype about the relationship that he has with the Modi, but it's been a downfall since then, and we haven't seen anything positive come out of this relationship, especially after Operation Sindoor that he claimed to be a broker between Pakistan and India. But how do you think India should deal with someone like Trump, someone who is unpredictable and someone who is not even reliable for that matter?
Yeah, so if you see what has happened now, you are right. I mean, the initial bonhomie, when the Prime Minister went there in the middle of February, the meeting, everything looked very good. It looked like India had stolen a march on China. I say that because in the first term of Trump, it took Prime Minister Modi almost 7 months or 6 months. It was July before he actually met with Donald Trump, and that too in the White House, whereas Donald Trump had already hosted Xi Jinping at Mar-a-Lago in March, that time in his first term. So there was a feeling that probably India had been slow off the blocks in cultivating Trump at that time. This time he wanted to atone for that mistake. So, the Prime Minister went to Washington in February. All things look good. Of course, with Trump, things change overnight. So you always have to be ready for the unpredictable. What we are seeing right now is a president who is desperate for some success. Right? So I think what India needs to do right now is to understand this man's desperate for something. He's not been able to end the Russia-Ukraine war. He's not been able to end Israel's Gaza offensive. He's been talking of trying to take Gaza. That's not happening. On the face of it, you had the Israel-Iran crisis that also, put him in a difficult spot. No deals are working out excepting the one in DRC, and the one in with Ukraine. So he's obsessed with this thing where he wants a deal. So I think the best thing for India right now is not to get into a war of words with him, to play it slow. But India has also begun to play some of its cards because of course, this is reported that the F414 engine, which has been delayed now inordinately,
Hmm.
it's believed that India has conveyed to America.
Co-production.
Yeah, so if that's not happening,
Hmm.
because it looks like they're just playing, rope-a-dope on it, right? Then possibly that they could be looking at alternatives. And the Safran engines that we are talking about now, okay, that India might look at the French option. Now, that's also one of the things to, let Trump know that, look, there are always options.
Hmm.
So don't do this. It could damage the overall relationship. So we need to play our cards very, very calculatively. The good thing is we have not stopped engaging the leadership. Please understand one thing. I agree with that assessment that the Trump White House, as usual, is at cross purposes. There is no ringmaster in this White House, just as it wasn't in the first term. No one knows which way the White House works. Rubio has his own view, Hegseth has his own view, and Trump has his own view on issues. Tulsi Gabbard says something, Kash Patel says something else, Lapnik says something else.
Hmm.
So the important thing is not to get into a war of words with Trump. Start replying to everything he says.
Agreed.
Just ignore him. And that's what the government has been doing, which is smart. But don't break down lines of communication. Keep the lines of communication open. So it was very good to see that when Jaishankar was there for the Quad meeting in the beginning of July, he spent, I think, about 3 or 4 days in DC. He went to UN and then he went to the DC. He met with Hegseth. He met with certain people in Congress. He met all stakeholders. He met the think tanks. So he engaged every stakeholder possible, because right now what you want is not to essentially get into a war of words with this man who's obsessed on a deal.
Because we see that often. We recently saw a U.S. senator speak out about breaking India's in some reasons as well when it comes to tariffs.
As I posted on Facebook, there was almost like a Wild West gangster talk. We'll crush your economy.
Yeah.
I mean, as if
You don't say that to someone like India.
yeah, and then where is the strategic partnership? And the point realizes is by crushing India's economy, are we living in mutual exclusive worlds? That I crush you and then I'm safe. If you crush me, you only make China stronger. You crush me, you lose a major market to invest in. So there are things, you lose a major defense partner. Let's remember, the Russians may still be our largest defense partner, but it's on a decline, right? The Russians were so predominant in our defense market. Now we are down to about 60-65% of our defense hardware comes from Russia. And it's not as though we are not buying from the Americans. There are some major, like the Apache helicopters, which have now come in. There are deals in the pipeline, which the Americans also are keen on India. So if you simply say crush India's economy, where's the incentive for you to do any work with India? So this seems to be just a kind of a, pressure tactic. Let's see. Now, the major thing will be, what does Trump do with his participation in the Quad summit?
Quad.
We don't know when the dates are not out as yet. What we understand is when the External Affairs Minister was in DC, he asked Rubio in a one-on-one, certain dates were suggested, and they asked that, if you could confirm these dates. Not only did Rubio say that is beyond my pay grade, I can't, confirm the dates, he was not even willing to confirm whether President Trump will travel or not. So we've not even got that confirmation. What that means is, you never know. He could just tell JD Vance, you go. Now that will diminish the Quad, right? It will allow China a clear chance to say, look, this is what happens. And that's not great. So that's not great for India. He seems to be wanting to push India. He realizes this is the one master stroke he has on India. Mr. Modi wants that Quad summit, and ideally, I think Modi wants it in September. Okay. Around his birthday, when he turns 75, etc. So if that has to happen, a deal has to happen before that. He seems to be staking everything on a good deal. Now, whether India is necessarily going to fall to that pressure, I don't know. India is suggesting we're not driven by any pressure. It could be September, October also. So we'll have to deal with this unpredictability of the United States here.
So, but the good thing is, in between these great powers that we talk about, China, US, none of them see us as a threat. How do we leverage this knowledge that we are not a threat for either of them, and gain access to different markets in different industries?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. In fact, that is one of India's strengths in what is an increasingly multipolar world. I mean, this is not a bipolar world, right? This is a bipolar world at the very top in certain respects. But both sides realize, although they might do what they do, both sides realize that they need those middle powers on their side. And both sides, for example, you see the latest tone of China. Although they have gone ahead with the Brahmaputra, the dam on the Brahmaputra, etc., they have shown an open willingness to engage India on many issues. Like the Kailash Mansarovar thing started. They now want to resume direct flights. And they are now putting, of course, that's their point of view. They're saying India and China must work together to keep the Americans honest. Of course, this could just be play trying to use India as a pawn. But what it does, it tells you that the United States needs India as a swing state. The Chinese also cannot afford to have an India that is drifting closer and closer to the United States. Right?
Because then we're seen as an adjunct power for that.
Exactly. And then it becomes difficult for them to actually do what they want to do in the Indo-Pacific, certainly in the Indian Ocean region. There is the issue also with Russia. The Chinese get very, very, picky when the Russian relationship gets stronger with India. For example, when Galwan happened, I know it from my own, discussions with certain Chinese scholars. They had leaned on Moscow to tell Moscow not to supply hardware to India during Galwan. And they were hoping that this so-called special relationship or, a partnership without limits, as they call the relationship with Putin, that will deliver. But Putin said, look, I'm not in this fight. This fight is between both of you. Both of you are my friends. I cannot pick and choose one or the other. Whatever I've already promised India, I will deliver. That cannot be stopped. But yes, I will not deliver anything new which could change the status quo with regard to your, clash with India. So even the Chinese understand that the Russia-India relationship is also something they have to watch. Now, what India needs to do, we are in this position where we are a coveted entity by almost all parts of the world. We need to become an attractive investment destination.
True.
Talk is fine. The Prime Minister is a great salesman and he sells India brilliantly, right? For India's strengths. But India ultimately is not going to effectively deliver because Prime Minister Modi attracts. That's only the first part. Ultimately, the ecosystem here has to gear up. And I'm telling you this because I know from personal experience, when Prime Minister Modi was dealing with Japan in 2014 and Abe was his great friend in Tokyo, Abe told him that, look, Prime Minister, I have full faith in you. I know your Prime Minister's office will clear things in days. The problem is not you. The problem is your provincial governments, your state governments. Because ultimately, if I have to invest in some project, land acquisition starts in the state. And that's where the problems are. So at least in governments that you have. So, we have to buck up. There are certain states doing well, but there are certain states, BJP-led states also, who really need to buck up. They have to identify specific sectors and they have to be aggressive in courting investment. Because it's only real investment on the ground. FIIs is not going to convert you into any kind of a world power. It only makes your economy more vulnerable because you are vulnerable to speculation and for a capital flight. What you need is investment and not unproductive investment, but productive investment. Right? The good thing is Prime Minister Modi in this term is focusing on the two things that are so key to take India to the next level of economic greatness. And that is ports and shipbuilding. I always say this when people ask me about Prime Minister Modi, I say his first term was about roads, right? And full on. He said, I'm going to connect every part of the country. And Nitin Gadkari was full on. It was also airports, but largely roads. The second term was all largely about Vande Bharat and railways. I'm going to connect all of India with railways and give people a quality of life in terms of traveling. And we've seen the revolution in Vande Bharat. In this term, the focus seems to be, yes, those things are happening. What is my focus from the infrastructure point of view? It's got to be ports because ports for exports. There's no export without port, right? And the reason China is this export powerhouse of the world and the trade powerhouse of the world is not only that they have the industrial power, which they of course have.
And
It's the fact
shipbuilding
there are
capability.
two things. First of all, 21 of the top 30 ports in terms of tonnage and, in terms of volume of trade are either owned by China, controlled by China, or they're managed by China in some way or the other. And it's across the world. That's their real power. The second real power is shipbuilding, as we have said. You cannot, and I'm saying this as India, you cannot become a Viksit Bharat if 94% of your trade plies on foreign bottoms. I'm not saying Chinese bottoms, foreign bottoms. So 94% of your trade is plied on tankers and shit which are not yours. What kind of a Viksit Bharat? You cannot.
Yeah.
So you have to turn that around. And kudos to the government and to Nirmala Sitharaman, the finance minister. In this last budget, she came out with this 25,000 crore strategic maritime fund, which is almost $3 billion. It's only a corpus right now, but it's a start, right? And the public sector and the private sector have to buck up because in the next 10, 15 years, we can't have the situation where the likes of Philippines and Vietnam infinitely smaller countries than us, right, are more prominent in shipbuilding than India is.
Yeah.
And this for a country that knew what shipbuilding was much before the Romans ever knew what a ship was.
Hmm.
So, so in that sense, ports and shipbuilding are the two most important yardsticks by which Prime Minister Modi's third term will be. And I think the signs are good.
Well
The
said.
signs are good.
Mhm. So, another region that is not been able to cope with Trump is EU.
Yeah.
And we've been seeing a lot of differences when it comes to, their you know, their presence in NATO and their the defense budget in NATO as well. But how do you see India shifting its focus with its relationship with EU and different nations in
Yeah, I
Europe?
think that's a brilliant question because I would like to, speak at some level about this because I have, kind of been saying this for quite some time. Yes, United States is important, Canada is important, the G7 is important, but at a time when there is so much instability and so much churn,
Hmm.
and clearly we have told ASEAN that you are the B team of China, as Piyush Goyal told them. So clearly we are not in great mood. We're not enthused by ASEAN right now
Mhm.
in the trade front. The only other economic region that can give you that boost, right, in terms of
Mostly in trade or mostly in tech trade?
trade and tech. So I'll put it this way.
Hmm.
It in some cases it will be trade in tech
Mhm.
or tech trade, but it will be trade and also tech. And let me explain this.
Hmm.
So Prime Minister Modi's biggest achievement on Europe has been to understand Europe in terms of the breadth of its coordinates. When Indian governments in the past engaged Europe, all said and done, it was the big three. It was UK, it was Germany, it was France.
Hmm.
France was the first country to stitch up a strategic partnership with us in 1998. UK and Germany thereafter.
Hmm.
Beyond that, we didn't look at Europe with any kind of seriousness. When the last 11 years, the Prime Minister, not only through his visits to European countries, but his personalized, charming diplomacy with leaders in the world. And I'll give you one example. Portugal's Prime Minister at that time, Antonio Costa, he's of Indian origin. In fact, he's from Goan origin.
Hmm.
I think he was 7 or 8 years old when his father relocated to Portugal. So he went there. Of course, he went on to become Prime Minister. Now he's one of our biggest, in I won't say exports, but one of our biggest expatriates in diaspora.
Hmm.
Prime Minister Modi in 2016 looked at him, and that time Portugal had the chairmanship of the European Union, engaged with him. He invited Prime Minister Modi to Portugal, met him, engaged with him, immediately invited him for the Pravasya Bharati Divas, festooned him, feted him, sent him to Goa. He was hosted by the Goa government almost like a state visit.
Hmm.
He came back to his family, to his friends, his teachers,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah.
The deep bond that Antonio Costa had with Prime Minister Modi was quite effective because our talks with the European Union, which was stalled since 2007, got a leg up
Hmm.
in 2020 in the middle of COVID when Portugal was holding the chairmanship and Portugal said it was a virtual summit and Portugal said, let's, push the FTA with India once again. Let's set the ball rolling. And today, at the time when Piyush Goyal says that probably we should be able to sign the FTA with European Union by the end of the year,
Hmm.
he's quite optimistic about it. One of the key players in ensuring that is going to be Antonio Costa, no longer Prime Minister of Portugal, but now he's the President of the European Council.
Oh.
And as we speak, they're actually in China for the summit. Now, Ursula von der Leyen, who's in a second term as the EC president, on the 28th of February this year, she, after being re-elected for a second term, she made India her first stop. Normally, when the commission president travel, they travel with a handful of commissioners, maybe not more than 2 or 3. Even now in China, it's only Kaya Kallas, who's the EU foreign policy chief, along with the others. When she came to India on the 28th of February, and it's a number coincidence, she came with 28 people.
Hmm.
Okay, so meeting was on 28th February with 28 people. She came with the entire cabinet to meet Prime Minister Modi and said, I think our stars are aligning. Now is the time in all this churn that's happening with so much instability. Let's do the deal. And she made it very clear to her negotiators, let's do it. Let's get it done. Right? So there is a deep-seated interest that the European Commission and the European Union has in India. Now, the Prime Minister has made Europe and European countries a stakeholder in the India growth story. And I'll give you some examples on it. And this is through his personalized diplomacy. His engagement of the Nordics has been very unique. the Nordics have a summit level meeting with only 2 sovereign countries in the world. India, of course, is one of them. The other is the United States. They don't have one with China, right? But they have one with India. And this is unique, right? And if Pahalgam had not happened, after which, of course, Operation Sindoor had to happen, the Prime Minister was headed in middle of May. His trip was to be to Norway, to actually not just meet the Norwegians, but also have the next biennial summit with the Nordics. Now, why Nordics are important? Each of the country has something unique to offer to India. Denmark is a country which is world renowned in terms of being the country that loses water the least. So to put it differently, 93% of its water that is used, potable water, is recycled and used again. It's known in the world as one of the best countries when it comes to water management, water conservation, and water recycling. This is such a big issue in our country where we are water stressed, if not water depressed. And Prime Minister Modi has been giving the clarion call that there are water shortages. 15, 20 years down the line, you might see a civil war in elite areas for water. We have to really conserve water. So our Maritime India vision, which was put out in 2020-21 for a 10-year period, who was the chosen partner country for the Maritime India vision? It was Denmark. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, who's still the Prime Minister, she came down and she's a great friend of Prime Minister Modi. She and Prime Minister Modi declared that Denmark is a knowledge technology partner for the Maritime India vision, because it's also about protecting your lakes and all of that, right? Second, Norway. Norway and India, Norway is infinitely times smaller than India. But Norway has the same extent of exclusive economic zone that India has, almost the same. 2.1 million square kilometers for India and about 2 million for them. We figure nowhere on the Blue Economy Index. We've been that good, right? That we don't figure on an index. Now we are coming up. Norwegians are in the top 5 in terms of what they have done to their ocean. And I remember in 2017 being part of the think tank called FINS, Forum for Integrated National Security. And we did a conference on SAGAR in Goa, supported by the Ministry of External Affairs, with a partner being Norway. They sent 6 professors and experts in the blue economy space to make presentations to us. They made fabulous presentations and we were literally, our eyes were popping out. They showed us how the ocean can be stratified. The ocean can be stratified into various levels. And that is something that India needs to do. Sweden is very good in biosciences. Again, that is something very important post-COVID. Please remember, the AstraZeneca, the Covishield that we had was with AstraZeneca, which is Sweden. Sweden has a role in our defense sector, in defense corridors, which we're trying to bring up now. The Bofors gun was Swedish. Even the Saab fighter, the Gripen by Saab, is Swedish. The Finnish have one of the best models on, education. Okay, digital education. Iceland is very good in terms of geothermal devices. And you can go on and on and on. If you look at the Netherlands, today in the semiconductor industry, 70% of lithographic designs of the advanced kinds are with Netherlands.
Yep.
And so Netherlands is a very small country but becomes such a strategically important.
The most important country when it comes to semiconductors.
You look at our transport plane that now Tatas are making with Airbus. And who was the leader who came here to sign the deal? It was the Spanish Prime Minister, Pedro Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Right? You see Italy, and we all know the great relationship that Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Meloni share. And it has really translated. So it tells you that Prime Minister Modi has been able to embrace Europe like no other continent. And that gives me confidence that if the FTA happens, and if we can drive our relationship with strong bilateralism, I don't say we'll replace the United States. There's no replacement here. But we'll at least be able to make Europe a very important stakeholder. Because Europe has money, Europe has technology, and Europe also has skills, which they can offer. And right now, the squeeze that they're facing between US and Russia, and they're being squeezed on both sides, they're looking to become bigger partners in the Indo-Pacific. And this is our time to be able to tell them, we are your veritable partner and not China.
Sir, last continent I want to cover before we end our conversation is Africa. PM Modi recently visited Africa, some countries in Africa. How do you, and we see a lot of growing influence of China as well, but how do you think Africa sees us differently as someone who's also a leader of the global South, And we are seen as a very pragmatic partner in Africa as well.
I think it's an excellent prod of yours because I do a lot of work in Africa. I'm very passionate about Africa and what Africa's future holds. So let's put it into a particular context. For a long time, Africa, the refrain on Africa was this is the dark continent, this is the forgotten continent, this is the lost continent. Far from it, the numbers tell a different tale. Africa today is the youngest continent in the world. The median age in Africa is younger than in India. So when we say 65% of India is below the age of 35 and we have a median age of something like 26, 27, they are around 21, 22. So they're much younger. And younger means that this is a lot that can be channelized into many productive activities. Like India, which has a voracious appetite for infrastructure, we can absorb infrastructure because we have so many deficits in our country. Africa is a massive continent, massive, massive in capital letters. So just infrastructure of all kinds, road, railway, airports, etc., right? Power lines, water lines, etc., that can be fabulous, including ports. So there's huge appetite that Africa has to be able to absorb this. Africa has certain inequities and deficits, and I want to point out two. They have 60% of the world's arable land, cultivable land, even now. And yet, what they produce is not even 10% of global output. So it tells you a mismatch between how much they produce and how much of land is available, which is pristine for development. And why do I say agriculture? Not only in terms of food security for Africans who keep importing a lot of food from the outside because they don't produce enough in Africa. I'm talking about food processing. It's a huge opportunity for countries like India. Of course, the Chinese are also involved to process, to create food processing industry there and to be able to use that food not only back in India and deal with some of the seasonal variations that we face, right? During Diwali time, you see the always, prices go up of, pulses, legumes, vegetables, etc. Onion ke prices, right? All of that. That can be addressed. I'll just give you a simple example how it happens. Santiago Peña, the president of Paraguay, was recently in Delhi on a state visit, of course, hosted by Prime Minister Modi. And when he gave the interview, he made a brilliant line. He said, look, we are friends with India because when we wanted vaccines, of course, we've always been friends with India, but India has touched a chord. When we wanted vaccines during COVID, we reached out to China. This is what Paraguay was saying. China told them, look, you remove your recognition from Taiwan and we'll do it. They said, you're blackmailing us even this time. They said, sorry, a deal is a deal. They said, sorry. They reached out to Taiwan. Taiwan said, we don't have it. They asked India. Jaishankar told Modi. Modi sent 50,000 vaccines to Paraguay. They established diplomatic ties. He said, I'm a country of 10 million people. And I have so much hydropower and so much of grasslands here, which are pristine. Nobody has developed them. I could churn out food for 100 million people. Now, at a time when Prime Minister Modi has decided that he's going to have these food depots around the country, one of the things that he's looking long term to deal with food seasonal variations and food inflation is for India to have, I think, about 220 or 240 depots around India, which will hold stockpiles of various kinds of essential commodities and staple food, so that you don't have too much a problem in the event of a mismatch between demand and supply. If that has to happen, Africa and Latin America, and Africa in particular, can be the biggest, backbone for something like this. Second is when COVID happened, Africa was the most under-vaccinated part of the world. What I had heard is, and from reliable sources that came out there, that at best 15% of Africa was vaccinated twice over. So two vaccine doses, only 15% of Africa got that. Most of them had one dose. Second dose, all put together, only 15%. You say, how did they survive? Well, it's a mystery for all of us, right? And thank God for that. Herd immunity, whatever it may be. Africa has realized they may not be so lucky the next time a virus hits. So they have decided at the level of the African Union that they will establish at least 4 centers, which will be mRNA vaccine producing centers. I think the first one is becoming operational in Rwanda. They want to have one in Ghana. They want to have one on the eastern side and one, I think, somewhere in the northern side, maybe Egypt. Now, India being a pharma power, they have reached out to India saying, can you help us in this, in building our health security? Now, this will be business for Indian companies.
Yeah.
Because if they are setting up, and what they have decided is, by 2040, at least 25% of all vaccines that they need should come from in-house. Oh, that's a big task. I don't think it will reach that, but at least it's a goal. Indian companies can help them. And they've reached out to India. They've not reached out to China. Now, when Prime Minister Modi hosted the India-Africa Forum Summit, of course, 9 years ago, it's not happened since and it should happen quickly. A very interesting thing happened. Prime Minister lent a personal touch to his Africa diplomacy. So he decided, he was told by Joint Secretary Africa that, sir, the previous 2 iterations, only about 14 countries have turned up. It's very embarrassing for us when the Prime Minister calls. He said, no, we'll do it differently. So he penned a handwritten letter, 2-paragraph letter, and that letter was dispatched to various ministers. Every minister in the Indian government was given one African capital to visit. Visit, personally deliver the letter to the concerned leader and tell them, Prime Minister Modi wants to receive you in Delhi. Personal touch. That's what Prime Minister is known for. It did wonders. From 14 countries, 40 countries, leaders, heads of state and government from 40 countries came. Another 14 sent foreign ministers. It's a big plus. The language is so different. When he stepped up, he told them in the meeting, I will not tell you what you want. You tell me what India can do for you. And they said, Prime Minister Modi, you are the first major power in the world who has talked to us in this respectable manner, treating us with respect. Everyone else comes and tells me, oh, you are great, a heart bleeds for you. Look, I want to give you this. You ask if I need. None of them do that. The Chinese, the Americans, the Europeans, etc. So India has credibility because India does that. Of course, India has been a votary of every African indigenous initiative. In 2013, Africa came out with a 50-year blueprint. It's called Agenda 2063. Right? It's a comprehensive roadmap of how Africa should transform for the better. India has publicly backed Agenda 2063.
Nice.
And Agenda 2063 has got a bumper sticker line. In America, they call it bumper sticker line. The second line reads, the Africa we want. Because all these years, for centuries, it has not been the Africa that Africa wants. It has been the Africa that the colonizers want. Right? They're telling the colonizers now, you are welcome here, but on different terms. No longer, hectoring us. No longer demanding things from us. You will have to now talk to us in a respectable tone. India has backed that. In 2018, when Prime Minister was in Uganda, he addressed the Ugandan Parliament in Kampala. He made it very clear that we have a 10-point plan on Africa, 10 principles. And all those principles were basically that India will be a preferred security partner and India will be a net developmental partner. Preferred. Normally, the Western world uses terms like net security provider. Net security provider is a term that spooks many countries because they look at it from the hegemonic prism.
True.
And they often doubt that what does this country want to do? Net provider means what? They'll take our base, they'll take our island, they'll do something, on our back, they'll put forces here. India said we are to be a preferred security partner. That means you will prefer us as a security partner because we are a first responder whenever things happen in the region. Mozambique, there was an issue of cyclones, etc. We responded. And all this was capped off in 2023 when Prime Minister Modi showed the statesmanship to ask a question in the G20. If European Union can be part of G20,
why not
African Union should not be part of it? After all, European Union is only 28 countries. This is almost double. It's 54, right? And important countries. So the argument was, but there are already African countries. South Africa is there. So the argument was, well, France is there. UK is there. Germany is there. Then why do you need European Union? If you can have all of them and have European Union, then have African countries and have African Union.
Agreed.
So this is that mentality that had to be broken down. And if it was not for Prime Minister Modi's, very purposeful
G20.
And he worked it very, very carefully. He didn't confront people. He cultivated consensus and ensured that they were brought in respectfully as the 21st member of the G20, which is actually G21 now. It's 19 countries, European Union and African Union. So India's Africa strategy, and of course the fact that he went now, just to give you a couple more points on this, a couple of things that Africa is most excited about India is the digitalization plan. It's the DPI that we do, right? What we call as the India stack or the tech stack. They have understood that this is really going to bring efficiency. So countries like Ghana, countries like Nigeria, countries like Namibia, of course Tanzania, very interested, Kenya, are very interested in this tech stack. And we are happy to provide them to them. Our tech stack does not impose any conditions.
Yeah.
For example, Kenya's cashless payment system is called M-Pesa. India's body, the UPI body, has a 30% stake in M-Pesa. There's no majority stake here. And we're not insisting that M-Pesa do anything. We just have a stake in M-Pesa. Many years back when Prime Minister Modi went to Kenya and you had Uhuru Kenyatta as president, Prime Minister Modi offered the first AIMS because many African tourists come to India as medical tourists, right? Of course, we will want them here because we'll get the money, but we're not so self-centered and selfish. We also want to build capacity. We also want to build capability in their country. So Prime Minister Modi unilaterally announced, and this is the generosity of the Indian mind, that India will set up an AIMS-like hospital, one. And then, of course, the Kenyans can, decide to build more. This has now become quite popular. I hear that Tanzania's lady president, when she met Prime Minister Modi, she requested for a similar AIMS in Tanzania. And I believe that even the Ethiopians would like to have it. We have decided to spread our IITs and IIM campuses to those places to build their education system, right? This is called genuine empowerment.
Yeah.
This is not hegemony, right? If you're creating good human resource in Africa, it's only going to benefit Africa. And so as a result of this, what happens is, so this is one part of it. The second part of it is they're also very interested in certain ways of how India does public participation. So, for example, Ghana became the 22nd country in the world that took very keen interest in Modi's gas subsidy program. If you remember, when Prime Minister Modi came to office, he made a public, clarion call to people like us, middle class people who are well off, privileged people. And he said, look, I want to cure the lung infections and the problems that these women have in the villages when they basically, they take in all these fumes, right? I need to provide them an LPG cylinder. Can you give up one cylinder from your quota, right? And that cylinder goes to that lady. Such was the tremendous response in the country. I believe you had more than 1 crore people giving up the subsidy and saying we're more than happy because we believe this is going to the right people. In Ghana, I remember the Ghanaians asking in a joint commission that we would like to implement this in our country. This is great public participation. So this is how India has been doing all of this. And I just end with the last point. At that 2016 India-Africa Forum Summit, when Prime Minister Modi asked them, what can we do for you? The leaders told him, can you put optical fiber cable for a continent-wide hotline for African leaders? Now, do you mean to say African leaders cannot ask this from Huawei? Huawei is more than competent to do it. Why they did not ask it to Huawei, but they asked it of Prime Minister Modi. So even the African leaders, and I'm not casting aspersions on them, I'm just saying some of them, for whatever reasons, they're pro-China, etc. Even they recognize that when it comes to matters like this, it is not just the technology, it is the trust with technology. Prime Minister Modi always says technology with trust. Trustable technology, not technology which is basically having integrity issues. They understood Huawei is a blacklisted company. Great company, but a blacklisted company. India's Infosys, TCS, Wipro are not blacklisted companies. So they asked us to lay the optical fiber cable. So they made a clear differentiation between China's fantastic infrastructure in the hard space, India's trustable technology infrastructure in the soft space.
It's great how, Narendra Modi has, harnessed this relationship with Africa, because also in near future, we're going to see the rise of natural gas, and Africa being a rich, resourceful country with natural gas, we'll see us benefit from it as well. Having said that, sir, this has been an insightful, lovely conversation. We covered all major areas, but maybe we will have you over again for another insightful conversation on another subject. But I would like to thank you again, because it was quite insightful for me, and I'm sure it's been for the audience as well.
Thank you. Look forward to this collaboration and happy to have me hosted here.
Thank you very much, sir. It means a lot. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Until then, keep reimagining yourself and know that the power of change lies within you. Jai Hind.